Jerwin, okay na ba?
Sir, wait lang po, wait lang po.
Cue mo na lang ako.
Sige po, sir, i-cue ko po kayo. Po, sir, you can start na po, sir. Sir, pwede na po kayo mag-start.
So, magandang umaga po, Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao. At muli po ay narito na naman tayo sa isang programa ng ating webinar, no, ng Local History Committees Network at ng Cavite Studies Center, no? Sustaining the discourse on Philippine history and culture during this pandemic. No? This is the monthly webinar series of LHCN under the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. No? Of course, in commemoration with the quincentennial celebrations of the Philippines themed victories and humanity. No? At ngayon po ang ating pangsyam na LHCN webinar series sapagkat kung matatandaan ninyo, nung nakaraang buwan ay meron din tayo at nakafocus tayo sa First Philippine Republic. Ngayon pong Pebrero, napakaraming commemorations, no? Pero isa sa mga tinignan natin na hindi masyadong binibigyan ng pansin ay itong Arts Month. No? Kaya ang ating theme ngayon ay Cavite's Arts and Culture. No? At nag-invite tayo ng mga scholars and artists, no, para bigyan tayo ng ilang background tungkol sa bagay na ito, no. So tayo po ngayon mga kababayan ay naka-live stream, no, sa website ng NQC at share mamaya sa website ng NHCP at the same time ng Cavite Studies Center, no. So ang programa po na ito ay in collaboration with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, kapisanan ng mga bahay saliksikan sa bansa o kabansa, Philippine Historical Association, Center for Tarlaqueño Studies, Palawan Study Center, Bacoor Historical Society at ang of course always partner natin ang Cavite Historical Society. At para simulan po ang ating programa, simula po tayo sa isang national anthem, then susundan po ito ng invocation followed by the Cavite hymn. Tumayo po tayo lahat at simulan po natin ang ating pambansang awit. Pag ito po ay pinlay na po. Salamat. Iligay po natin ang ating mga sarili sa presensya ng Panginoon, sa ngalan ng Ama, ng Anak, ng Espiritu Santo. Amen. Panginoon, nagpapasalamat po kami sa araw na ito na inyong ibinigay upang muling magkita at makakontribute sa ating disiplinang kasaysayan na tumutungkol sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas at kultura kahit sa panahon ng pandemiko. Sana po ay namnamin natin ang bawat mga lektura at bigyan nyo ng basbas ang bawat lecturers upang maparating nila ng epektibo at magbigay ito sa aral sa ating mga manunood. Lahat po ng ito ay inihiling natin sa pangalan ng Panginoon. Amen. Siguro mamaya na lang muna at nagkakaroon tayo ng technical difficulties. So magandang umaga po sa ating lahat at para bigyan tayo ng pambungad na pananalita mula sa National Historical Commission ay inibitahan po natin ang isa sa mga siguro tumatayong spokesman at isa sa mga may kinalaman sa National Quincentennial Celebrations ngayon kasi alam po natin na malapit nang magsimula ang mga pagdiriwang tungkol sa 500 years of the expedition at ang ating pong magbibigay ng welcome remarks sa ngayon ay isa sa mga malaki ang partisipasyon sa bagay na yan. At yan po ay walang iba kundi si Mr. Ian Christopher Alfonso ng National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Sir, magandang morning, magandang umaga sa inyo.
Magandang umaga rin po, Doc Manny. Commissioner Manny, Commissioner po ng Historical Commission. So, nandito po ako upang katawanin po ang Pambansang Komisyon pang Kasaysayan ng Pilipinas at bilang ano na rin po, bilang nangunguna po sa special na unit ng NHCP. Ito po yung Local Historical Committees Network. At ito pong programang ito online ni Dr. Manny Calairo at ng Cavite Studies Center ay under the auspices of our office, yung Local Historical Committees Network or LHCN. Ako po ay sabihin natin, lumaki katawan. I mean, lumaki na nasa pamamatnubay ni Dr. Manny since nung 2007, Doc Manny. Ayan. So, hindi ko po naman po in-expect na magiging boss ko siya balang araw. Hindi ko naman po in-expect na mapupunta ako sa NHCP. Ang tinutukoy ko po ay yung aming gawain sa kasaysayang lokal. Bali, si Dr. Manny po ay isa sa mga masasabi nating masugid na tagapagsulong ng kamalayan sa kasaysayang lokal. At kung hindi naman po sa pinalalaki natin ang ulo ni Dr. Manny, marami na po siyang anak. I mean, when we say anak, marami na po siyang mga binuksang local study centers sa Pilipinas. So, isa po yan sa mga hindi na maiaalis na katotohanan ng Doc Manny, malaki ang naiambag niya talaga sa kasalukuyang panahon pagdating sa pagsusulong ng kasaysayang lokal. Nakakatuwa po na noong 2010, itinatag ng NHCP under its charter yung Local Historical Committees Network. At ito na po yun. Pinalalakas po natin ang ating presensya sa mga probinsya na lalo pa nilang pagyabungin, lalo pang paunlarin, palalimin ang kanilang mga kamalayan at pag-aaral sa kasaysayang lokal. At nakakatuwa po na ang topic natin ngayon ay hindi hardcore history. Ito po ay may kinalaman sa sining at kultura na ito po ay malaking bahagi na pag-intindi natin sa kasaysayan. na ang kasaysayan po ay hindi lamang limitado sa nakasulat o sa teksto. At nung dinidefine natin, Dr. Manny, ang definition ng local history last October po pa November, dinefine natin ang local history. Bahagi, isa sa mga local historical materials na dinidefine natin, hindi na nagbukas na ng kumbaga floodgates ng mga historians na kasama sa Local Historical Committees Network na hindi na lamang teksto ang batayan ng pagsusulat ng kasaysayan. Nariyan na yung built heritage, nandiyan na ang tradition, ang folklore, ang sining, anything na makapagbibigay sa atin ng semblance of the past. What actually happened. So nandiyan lahat yan. Anything na minana natin from the past, magiging sources na siya ng pagsusulat ng kasaysayan at pag-intindi. So, ang akin pong inaasahan na magiging mabunga itong discussion na ito na ating maririnig across Facebook pages ng DepEd, ng NHCP, NCCA, at ng NQC, ng National Quincentennial Committee, dahil kailangan po nating magkaroon ng presensya din sa online, para hindi lang tayo yung lagi nang nagkikita-kita, at least through online, marami tayong nararating, maraming mga kumbaga, isipin ng tao, meron palang ganito. So maraming salamat po, Doc Manny, sa pag-i-initiate ng ganitong programa buwan-buwan. Yun lamang po. Maraming salamat po, Doc Manny.
Maraming salamat, Sir Ian. Alam niyo, sa totoo lang, si Sir Ian ay totoo yung sasabi niya, no, na dahil sa online, marami tayong nararating ngayon. Sa tingin ko nga, maski na magkaroon na ng new normal, ito pa rin online platform ay magiging regular na, no, na programa natin. Dahil kung ikukumpara natin sa face-to-face, ay napakahirap mag-mount na isang programa sa face-to-face kumpara dito sa ganitong klase ng webinar series, no? At tama rin sabi ni Sir Ian, matagal na kami magkasama, no? Mula nung siya pa ay musmus pa lamang, gano'n na, no? Siya, nasa Bulacan State University na naging bahagi ng Center for Bulacan Studies, no? Then naging sensation sa Central Luzon, no? Sa Kapampangan Study Center. At ngayon nga ay nasa National Historical Commission at napakalaki ng role na ginagawa niya sa ating komisyon, no? At maraming salamat po, Sir Ian. At sana nga ay sabi ko nga sa lahat ng mga cultural workers ay huwag po tayo mapapagod dahil sa tayo pong inaasahan ng ating bayan pagdating sa pagpapasa ng kaalaman sa dating henerasyon. So muli, Sir Ian, Alfonso, maraming salamat po sa isang bibigay ng inspirasyon sa ating mga kababayan. Ngayon po ay nais din nating hingan ng ilang mensahe, no, ang Vice President ng Cavite Historical Society na napaka-aktibo, no, sa organization, hindi lamang sa Cavite Historical Society, no. Siyempre sa kanyang kinalalagyang Imus Historical Society, no. At po ay walang iba si Dr. Arlene Abella. Ma'am, magandang morning.
Magandang umaga po, Commissioner Calairo. Isang magandang umaga po sa lahat. At sa ngalan po ng kabuuan ng Cavite Historical Society sa pamumuno ng kagalang-galang na Cesar Birata at siyempre ang aming Pangulo, Dr. Calairo, kayo po ay inaasahan namin na makikilahok sa buwanang pagtatanghal na ito ng Cavite Studies Center, DLSU Dasmariñas. Binabati din po natin at pinasasalamatan si Dr. Rene Escalante at ng NHCP, si Professor Ian Alfonso at ang kabuuan ng LHCM. Culture is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts na nabanggit nga po ni Professor Ian kanina. Bago pa man dumating ang mga dayuhang mananakop, ang mga Pilipino ay natural lamang na may mga kasibihan o tanda ng mga kaugaliang dapat tularan ng mga bagong henerasyon, katulad ng paggalang sa matanda, pagsasalita o pagsagot ng po, opo at hindi po, pagmamano at ang ugaling bayanihan. Karamihan sa atin, pati na ang mga etnikong pangkat, ay may mga paniniwala sa dakilang lumikha o yung tinatawag na monotheism, bagamat ginagabayan din sila ng mga tinatawag nilang lesser deities. Sa dalahilang ito, nang dumating ang mga Kristiyanong kleriko, hindi na sila gaanong nahirapan, bagamat ipinagpipilitan ito ng mga kleriko na mapalaganap ang Katolisismo sa ating bansa. Isang natatanging halimbawa ng katutubong kultura ay ang sanghiyang ng Alfonso at Indang na nasabing nagmula rin sa naik. Dito ay napapaloob ang sayaw sa apoy o firewalk. Nakamamangha at walang napapaso sa mga nagbabagang apoy, hindi po ba? Ito daw po ay isang paraan ng pasasalamat sa masaganang ani, sa pagaling sa sakit, o ang pagkaligtas sa kamatayan. Sa lupang Cordillera, ang katutubong pagsambit ng mga kanto o awit na tinatawag na alum at hudhud ay may sintulad din sa mga ganitong pasasalamat. Sa katunayan, ang hudhud na binibigkas ng mga kababaihan sa tuwing pag-ani o sa mga araw ng kasayahan ay binigyan ng UNESCO na parangal na Masterpiece of Oral and Intangible Heritage of Humanity. Ito ay ayon kay Dr. Jesus Peralta na dalubhasa sa Philosophy at Anthropology at naging dating direktor ng National Museum. Sa paglipas ng panahon, ang karamihan ng mga tradisyon at kapistahan ay umiikot sa relihiyon. Ang Caracolo Street Dance ay sa Bispiras at ang prosesyon naman ay sa araw ng kapistahan, patungkol sa mahal na birhen o sa tanging patron o patrona ng bawat bayan. Kabilang dito ang mga masidhing debosyon ng mga Mardika sa Ternate, sa Santo Niño Jesus, ang debosyon ng mga Cavite Puerto o Cavite City sa Virgen de la Soledad na tutukoy ng ating Professor Austria, ang sapyaw ng tansa, ang sumilang ng silang, may tinis ng kawit at iba pa. At tungkol naman sa arts o sining, mabanggit po natin ang paghilom na ginagawa tuwing Pebrero sa Amadeo na kasabay din ng kanilang Pahimis Festival. There are two aspects of culture, material or tangible, and the non-material or the intangible. This morning, we are going to be presented with insights into our tangible culture. And so we thank our esteemed speakers for today and our technical support team for making this possible. Let us enjoy this morning's lectures. Mabuhay po tayong lahat sa pagpapala ng Panginoon. Salamat po.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Arlene. Napakaganda ng inyong sinabi from a global context, no, ng culture, no? At ibinaba ninyo sa local at sa halimbawa dito sa Cavite, no? At napakaraming maaring makitang pag-aralan, no, at i-document dito sa Cavite kasi yun nga, ay makikita natin to sa iba't ibang format ng arts and in general ay heritage. Kaya well, we encourage everyone, no, na lalo na dito sa Cavite, no, mga Caviteños, na wag na silang lumabas ng Cavite. Dito pa lamang sa loob ng Cavite, napakarami ng mga pwedeng i-document, no, pag-aralan ng mga ating mga estudyante ng kasaysayan. So, Dr. Arlene, maraming salamat po. Si Dr. Arlene,
salamat po.
Vice President ng Cavite Historical Society. Ngayon po, siyempre, at mapalad po tayo, no? Lagi naman tayo mapalad, no? Dahil nakaka-attend po sa atin ang ating chairman, no, ng Cavite Historical Society, si Prime Minister Virata. Sir, isang maikling mensahe lang po para sa ating mga kasamang nanonood ngayon.
Magandang umaga sa aking mga mahal na kababayan. Ako po ay lubos na nagpapasalamat sa National Historical Commission ng Pilipinas sapagkat ipinagpapatuloy nila itong webinar at ito nga ay isang programang dapat ipagpatuloy sapagkat maraming natututuhan ang mga tao sa buong Pilipinas. Hindi katulad nung araw na pag tayo ay magpupulong at sama-sama sa iba't lugar, kukonti ang nakadadalaw at bago nila ma- malaman kung ano mga nangyari ay matagal na pag-iintay sapagkat yung mga naka-imprentang balita ay karaniwan ay nagagambala. So tayo po ay makikitulong para maituloy itong webinar series na ito. At ang Cavite Historical Society ay tuloy na nagsusumikap na magkaroon ng kasaysayan ng bawat bayan dito sa Cavite at ang buong lalawigan ng Cavite. At ito po ay aming pinagsisikapan at para lalong mapabuti ang kasaysayan ng buong Pilipinas. Ganon din sana ang gawin ng ating mga kasama sa ibang lalawigan at bayan-bayan. Nasabi na nga na hinaharap natin ang isang 500 taong introduksyon ng pagka-Kristiyano ng mga Pilipino. Ito po ay dapat nating salubungin at sundin natin ang mga turo at pangaral ni Jesucristo. So, ito na lang po ang masasabi ko ngayon. Salamat sa inyong pakikinig at ibig ko rin pasalamatan ang mga magsasalita ngayon at magtuturo sa atin. Maraming salamat po at magandang araw sa inyong lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Prime Minister Cesar Virata, ang chairman ng Cavite Historical Society. Totoo po yun, no? Ang laki ng nagagawa ng National Historical Commission ngayon, no? Sa pangunguna ni Dr. Rene Escalante, ang chairman ng Historical Commission, dahil sa bahagi ng mandato ng NHCP ay itong NHCN. Actually po, para sa inyong kabatiran, noon lamang isang linggo ay nagkaroon kami ng special meeting, no, ng mga bagong commissioners at pinag-aralan namin yung mga batas na may kinalaman sa NHCP at yung IRR ng NHCP charter. At isa pong malaking component ng NHCP charter itong pagbubuo ng LHCN o Local History Committees Network. Kaya po tama po yung encouragement sa atin ni Prime Minister Virata, no, na maging aktibo ang bawat lalawigan at bayan tungkol sa kanyang kasaysayan. At yan po ay sinusuportahan ng mandate po ng National Historical Commission through LHCN. Kaya sabi nga natin, napaka-diversified ng Pilipinas, no? Ang dami nating mga institutions, ang dami nating mga religious organizations, no? Ang dami nating mga grupo, no? Grupo etniko. At lahat yan ay meron kanya-kanyang kasaysayan. Kung magkakaroon tayo ng mga ganitong klase ng samahan pangkasaysayan, samahan pangkultura, no, magkakaroon ng boses ang bawat grupo para maipahayag ang kanyang kasaysayan na bubuo sa ating pambansang kasaysayan. So muli sir, maraming salamat po Prime Minister sa isang hold-up sa
Pero mahina yung volume.
Yeah, medyo mahina ang volume.
Ngayon po, no, datako na tayo sa first lecture, no? At muli babanggitin ko, no, marami yatang artist dito ngayon, ha. Kasi yung isa, yung ating first lecturer, ang lecture niya ay may kinalaman sa medyo religious, ano? Portabaga icon, siguro alam niyan, no? Ang ating Birhen Soledad, no? As a movable national cultural treasure. Pero bukod sa kanyang pagiging historian, with the permission of Sir Alain, no, yan po ay isang painter din at nag-exhibit sa iba't ibang mga lugar, no, ng mga galleries, no. At dalawa ang painter natin ngayon na nasa kasama natin at natay mapapalad, no. At syempre isang ewan ko kung tatanggapin niya, isang Rizalist advocate, no? So hindi ko na pagtatagalin. Ang ating pong lecturer ay naging pinuno at ngayon ay bahagi ng School of Multidisciplinary Studies ng De La Salle College of St. Benilde. Yan po ay wala iba kundi si Professor Jose Alain, Austria. Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Manny.
sir.
Teka lang, share ko lang yung screen ko.
Okay, no?
Pwede na ba ako magsimula?
Okay po, please. Salamat.
Malinaw na?
Malinaw po, malinaw.
Okay. So, good morning to all of you. So, it is my privilege to share to you a summary of my 2020 research entitled Widow of the Galleons, the artistic transformation of the Virgen de la Soledad in the colonial Philippines. I do hope that this 20-minute talk will help broaden our understanding of this icon of the Virgin Mary beyond its religious function into something more secular. I'm speaking here of being an artwork and being an artifact. Okay. The Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Portabaga is no ordinary 17th century painting. In 2017, the Republic of the Philippines declared it as a national cultural treasure. This honor rests primarily on the fact that this image is the oldest known dated Marian painting in the Philippines so far, and the rich intangible heritage that developed around it. This is one of the rare cases wherein a national cultural treasure is declared together with its associated intangible heritage. So you have both the tangible, which is the painting, and the intangible heritage, which includes the oral traditions and the fiestas, all declared in one bunch as national cultural treasure. Now, the next year, 2018, Pope Francis wrote the Bull of Canonical Coronation, which is actually the highest possible honor given by the Church to a venerable image, be it a statue or a painting. In doing so, the Church acknowledges the miraculous nature of the image and affirms the authenticity of the popular cultus associated with it. This current research aims to look at the Portabaga painting from a different light and its place in the much bigger narrative of sacred art and global exchange from the 16th till the 19th centuries. The speaker wants to delve deeper actually into the following issues. Number one, the Portabaga painting as an important copy or variant of the Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de la Victoria, which was originally in Madrid. Number two, its dynamism as a work of art, which is constantly evolving and changing its visage through the centuries. And number three, the Cavite icon, I'm speaking here of the Portabaga Virgin, as a catalyst of an entirely Filipino way of imagining the sorrowful Virgin. You know, the idea of an entirely new type of Mater Dolorosa was actually the brainchild of Spanish royalty. As you see here, a painting of the royal court going through the baptism of Prince Fernando. In particular, it's Isabel Valois, who actually came from France. She's the third wife of Philip II of Spain, who commissioned a sculptor, a famous sculptor, Gaspar Becerra, to actually create a polychromatic statue of the Virgin Mary meditating on the Passion of Christ. She is to be called the Virgin of Solitude or Soledad because on the night of Good Friday, she was totally alone, contemplating the Passion of Christ, which she herself has seen with her own eyes. But it was the intervention of a lady of court, and her name is Doña Maria de la Cueva, Viuda de Oreña, Countess of Oreña, that actually transformed the masterpiece of Gaspar Becerra. Before it can even be displayed, this countess, which happens to be also assigned as the camarera or caretaker of this new image, insisted that to achieve the simple and dignified look so favored by the Council of Trent, the statue of Becerra should be dressed in the black and white robes of widowed Spanish noblewomen like herself. In case you're wondering, those women who are inside the red rectangle, mga madre ba sila? Are they nuns? Well, they are actually not nuns. Those are widowed members of the royal family and under members of the nobility who happen to be widows. So they are wearing these clothes called de luto. And I wanted to take note of the shape of their clothing because the Condesa de Oreña, the Countess of Oreña, would insist that this new statue must wear that kind of clothing. Because one thing they've noticed is that there's a tendency in Spain, particularly to over decorate the Virgin. Now, the Council of Trent was warning them to tone down because this image of the Virgin Mary is not a doll. Hindi to mannequin, hindi to fashion model na pagandahan. So they decided to tone it down, and the Countess of Oreña specified, how can you be more toned down than this kind of garb? So this new statue of the Virgin Mary will not be dressed in the stylized Sevillana or in Jewish clothing. She will be dressed in the mourning clothes, pangluksa, na damit of the Habsburg court. And so when it was finished in 1565, now you see the original statue, you will notice now that it bears an uncanny resemblance to those women because Mary is now dressed as a widow of the Habsburg court. This image was entrusted to, in turn, to the Frailes Minimos de San Francisco de Paula, or the Minim Friars, in their convent in La Victoria, Madrid. And this explains now why she has the title Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de la Victoria. The Padres Minimos, or the friars, were given two responsibilities in relation to this royal sponsor devotion. Number one, they have to promote it to the faithful, first in Spain and probably to the rest of the empire. And second, which is more important, they should referee or police the ranks so that people will not create unauthorized copies or probably create unauthorized cults of the Virgin Mary, independent to the one established by the royal family at La Victoria. So this is actually a heavily policed devotion. It's somewhat like putting a royal copyright or trademark on the Virgin Mary and making it sure that this devotion is approved across at least Spain and other parts of the empire. So because of this highly refereed atmosphere, it is interesting to note that the Padres Minimos were able to create a canon. When you say canon, they have fixed laws on how the Virgin should be depicted in reproductions. And they are always very clear. Unfortunately, I did not study sculpture, so I'll focus on the two-dimensional form, which is prints and paintings. And they're very, very clear. When you produce prints or paintings, it should be, and I'll take note of this, it should be a picture of the statue of Gaspar Becerra on display at La Victoria. It is something that should always be emphasized, that any two-dimensional copy should always be a picture of the Gaspar Becerra statue on display at La Victoria. So they are really very, very keen in protecting its design. They were able to create 4 basic Spanish templates. Honestly, these are the ones that are approved by both the friars at La Victoria and the royal family at El Escorial. And all of them are lovely, in fairness. All of them are beautiful. But it is the 4th pattern, we call it pattern D to your right, which truly captures our attention. This print is from La Rioja. And why does it capture our attention? Because it seems so familiar to us. It looks like the Portabaga of Cavite. Now we're, reversing the narrative. This is much older than the Portabaga. So pattern D is a close-up of the Becerra statue, but on a smaller table altar. There are only 2 candles, and the curtains are drawn to reveal a very intimate composition. In pattern D, the Becerra masterpiece is is smaller and much more accessible to the viewer. Now, it's interesting to note that pattern D will be the favorite style for choice, particularly when it comes to domestic altars. When you say domestic altars, these are the altars at home, not the ones in church, because these are very small uh, prints or paintings. It is interesting to note also that pattern D would eventually become the favorite template for small-scale paintings for home use. To your right is a 17th century oil painting of the Soledad from the Madrid atelier. It is practically pattern D in color. Now, for some reasons, the artists are allowed to get rid of some minor details like candles, etc. Get rid of the stylized knots. But one rule must not be violated. The Virgin must always remain simple and unadorned, just like the original statue of Becerra at La Victoria Convent. Now, well, as everybody knows, the galleon trade will play a major role in the iconographic transformation of both the icon and the devotion to the Soledad. When the highly controlled Spanish icon meets the indigenous traditions of the Americas, the somber Soledad turned into a celebration of loud colors and folk idioms. Well, they are very far from Spain and very far from the Padres Minimos, who actually don't have a strong presence both in Latin America and hardly any presence in the Philippines. Locals took liberties in painting the Soledad. The result now is the emergence of indigenous styles of Soledad iconography. Now, what you see to your left is actually an example of a Soledad from Antigua de Guatemala, and who is rather depicted as a plump woman with Native American features. She's an India. Her robes now decorated with very ornate gold patterns. At the center, you're seeing a Soledad from Cusco, Peru, and you can see that she's relatively tall and far from being sad. She seems to be happy, meditating with her roses. And to your right, you're going to see a Soledad from Mexico, very whimsical, very playful, almost drawn like that of a child with all those little angels and God the Father on top. So you could see that there are different styles emerging, and they cannot be controlled anymore because they are very far from Spain. So I'm forwarding this hypothesis. The artistic transformation of the Soledad in the Americas will find a striking parallel in the farthest outpost of the empire, which is the Philippines. At the height of the galleon trade, Cavite served as the main port of call for Spanish ships. Galleons arrive and disembark precisely in this walled town. As an international port, it is very probable that copies of the Soledad from Spain or probably the Americas reached the Philippines via Cavite. So whether it came miraculously through an apparition in 1667, which is primarily an oral tradition, or through the usual trade path, its exact origins and the name of the painter remains unknown. Scholar Regalado Trota Jose and restorer Baita Reyes, who by the way is the one who restored the painting in 1984, believe that the painting came all the way from Spain. Personally, I am convinced to support this, and I'm more inclined to support this hypothesis that this is a Spanish painting. For one, it perfectly fits the template of the Madrid atelier. So one way of saying that all evidence suggests that the painting in Cavite is actually a Spanish painting. Here is the anatomy of the Spanish Portabaga icon. What you're seeing now is actually the image without its accessories. This was after it was stolen in 1984. Now, despite the visible damage, one can sense the original simplicity and intimacy of the composition. In its bare form, the Portabaga Virgin reminds us of Madrid Atelier's pattern D. Even the Western play of light and shadow seems to point to its Castilian origins. I think this becomes more convincing when we see how it looks like when it was restored, and therefore is nearer to its original look. Now we can see the details of the small painting. You could see actually the dark bluish curtains, the outline of the statue, which is actually so bethera. The Virgin herself is wearing the classical de luto, very simple, nothing decorative, nothing over the top. Even the furnishings are very, very minimal. So this is very much in the spirit of the official Madrid style. So there's every reason to believe that this painting is actually a Spanish one. But devotees don't see the painting as a museum piece. They see it actually as a supernatural representation of the Mother of God. And since the Soledad de Portabaga's fame rests more on its miraculous reputation, the picture becomes the vessel on which devotees express their love or gratefulness through precious gifts called ex votos. You will see in the picture how a simple canvas, like the one that I specified, turned into an ornate piece of art with all these trappings of gold and silver, filigrees, all melted from melted coins and jewelries of devotees and those people who became rich because of the galleon trade. As her fame grew, so does her image and its frame. So it's known in some anthropological circles as the aesthetics of clutter. The aesthetics of clutter is not a one-time, big-time makeover of sorts. The aesthetics of clutter is a very slow, organic process of accumulation. As more and more ex votos and offerings come, the image's visage, meaning its look, gradually changes through the centuries to the point that you could no longer recognize the original. And this is precisely the same phenomenon that happened to the once very simple image of the Virgin of the Rosary in Manawag. When devotees make pilgrimages to the Hermitage in Cavite Puerto, what do they see? They do not see a simple painting from the Madrid school, but a highly stylized figure covered with all these knickknacks and all those stuff. What you see right now is the Soledad de Portabaga at the height of her glory. This altered visage is the one that remains embedded in the mind of the devotee and the artist. Thus, subsequent attempts to create copies and variants utilize the altered Portabaga as their template. What was once a mere copy or variant of the Madrileña Soledad has become the prototype of the artistic tradition in this part of the globe. So it seems early as 1690, there is already the cult of the Nuestra Señora de la Soledad, which is entirely independent or unconnected with the one in Madrid. And the devotion of the Filipinos are very touchy. They are tangible, mobile, tactile. They want to touch things. So they have to bring the Soledad to their homes, their home altars, their bedrooms. And so the demand eventually led to the artistic transformation of the Soledad in the hands of local artists, most of whom are actually anonymous. So I want you to take note now of 5 locally made variants. Actually, there are hundreds of locally made variants, each of them unique, but I only have time for 5. So forgive me for this, but they are the most interesting ones as well. Okay? What we have now is a famous estampa on silk, which used to belong to the Jesuit College of Cavite before they were expelled. This print seems to herald the start of a uniquely Filipino interpretation of the Soledad. The basic elements of the one in Madrid remain, but artistic license is everywhere. The Holy Spirit makes his appearance. There are more instruments of the Passion beneath the Virgin. Take note also that the Virgin is now praying on a pillow or a cushion. And dominating the lower part of the picture, you see there a Manila galleon on the high seas. This is an obvious reference to the port of Cavite and the icon's role in the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. It is a well-known fact that the icon was used to bless the galleons departing from Mexico. So there are 2 signatures of the Philippine style. First, the galleon, that's one. The galleon will always be there. And the shape of the Virgin is exaggeratedly pear-shaped. Para siyang peras or makopa or manganda exaggerated. And that seems to be typical of the Philippine school. This painting from San Isidro, Nueva Ecija is gaudy, almost cheerful, very, very different from the dark Portabaga. So you see here, the melancholic shadow of the Virgin totally disappeared, as if you're seeing it in broad daylight. Filipinos have this sense of horror vacui, a fear of space. So, where there is negative space, they fill it every nook and cranny with all sorts of happy patterns. Now you will see that the Virgin's supposedly simple clothes is now star-studded, just like the Guadalupe. If you look at the frame, it's very, very charming. When you look closely at this frame, you will see the symbols of Holy Week randomly scattered all over the place. There's even the rooster of St. Peter there. But the essence of the Soledad is not lost. It's still there on top. There's an empty cross that dominates the upper part of the frame. The figure of Christ, although it's very, very clear, is nowhere to be found because it is still Good Friday. Christ is yet to be resurrected. But even despite the so-called sorrowful theme, you could see that the picture is a rather happy-colored one. One of the most interesting will be this Soledad de Camba from Camba Street, Binondo, which was a place that used to host a large Caviteño migrant population. It is one of the most unique specimens of the Philippine school. Here, the original reproduction is totally covered in textile and metal embellishments orisa. What makes this unusual is that there's virtually no sense of perspective. This painting is totally flat. Now, the Virgin herself is ornamented with gold, and all the major elements of the 18th century Jesuit estamp are there: curtains, galleons, instruments of the Passion. You will notice too those two angels which used to dangle on the curtain ropes. They are actually now flying towards the Virgin. This is obviously borrowed and modified from the Portabaga. That's why I call them the Portabaga cherubs, which is another signature of the Philippine school. Her golden sash with that, you're going to see also that the general impression is that this Pearl ship Soledad is with cryptic symbols floating all around her as if gravity does not exist. I personally like this particular image. It's one of the most charming of the Philippine Soledad. This Soledad of Buhi, this is from Camarines Sur, strikes me as a very folksy composition. The colors, very solid and bright. And when you look closely at the Virgin, she has become a visual platform for innovations. You will see that she has her Immaculate Heart, which is in bright red, and then it's pierced with seven daggers, which is actually borrowed from another element, which is called the Nuestra Señora de los Dolores. Her robes are now gilded with gold. She now has a golden sash, and even her rosary has a conventional, unusual medallion attached to it. And she is in a standing position, which is unique among all Soledads. You're going to see here her feet is actually exposed. So unlike the standard Soledad, she is not kneeling. She is actually in the standing position. By now, it is pretty obvious in these examples that the Virgin is often very small in relation to the frame. In the Philippines, the frame itself becomes an extension of the Virgin, an amplification of her presence, and from the point of view of the artist, another platform to showcase his skill and creativity. This box frame Soledad is simply awesome, and I deliberately placed it at the end of the presentation to highlight how far the Soledad's iconography was transformed in the span of 2 centuries. There is a certain balance and maturity in this piece that I could say is truly Filipino. The Virgin is exaggeratedly pear-shaped and heavily embroidered, almost like a three-dimensional Philippine santo. Look at those Chinese-style ivory heads and hands. The drawn curtains are so realistic. The background reminds me of the Balducino of Nanabal. And you will see that galleon is no longer floating in the sea. It's literally flying in the air. And you will not see a single reference to the Passion of Christ. The empty cross is gone. The Virgin is now meditating on a galleon. I think I personally see in this particular bas-relief or box frame picture the full maturity of the Philippine school. And it is still actually evolving to this century, but I only focus on colonial examples. So there are many ways of viewing the Portabaga painting. As an artist myself, I see it as an important turning point as long as Philippine and Spanish sacred art history is concerned. Now, why do I think so? Number one, I think it's a noteworthy specimen of the rigid Madrid school of Soledad pictures. Second, I think it is a rare and dynamic piece of art. It's constantly evolving its looks and its visage through the centuries. And third, the Soledad de Portabaga, although by herself, not from the Philippines, in her altered look, will actually be the catalyst of an entirely new way of imagining the Virgin Mary in a very, very Filipino way. Thus, there is indeed a Philippine school of Soledad painting. These are three more reasons, artistic that is, why the icon of Our Lady of Solitude in Cavite truly deserves to be a national cultural treasure. Before I wrap up this talk, allow me to present the main sources used for this lecture. And special thanks to the organizations and people who shared their photographs for this talk. And special thanks to all people who made this research possible. To all of you who are so patient in listening to this lecture, thank you very much and have a good day.
Maraming salamat, Sir Alain. No, very informative, no? Tracing the artistic transformation, no, of the Virgen de la Soledad. No? At kung gusto makita ng ating mga kababayan ng original, no? Kung doon nagkakamali, nasa San Roque Church siya, no? Sa ngayon, sa likod ng altar, no? Nandoon nakalagay yung yung ating Virgen de Soledad de Portabaga. Wala pa sir tayo mga tanong, pero siguro kung pwede magtanong muna ako, no? Kasi yung mito, no, ng Soledad, na paano siya dumating sa Cavite City, no? Nakuha siya sa tabing
Naval
dagat.
Yard.
Naval Yard. Tapos may mga sentries na nakakita daw sa kanya bago siya makita. Ay tawag dito, merong mga apparitions na lumulutang siya sa dagat, no? Ano ba yung itong ganitong parang mito o stories ay adapted din sa ibang mga cities and municipalities relative to the Virgin?
Nagkaroon kami noon ng pagsasaliksik tungkol dito. Tinanong ko yung ilang membro ng Kofradia, ilang mga historiador tungkol dito. Ang unang kinaklaro nila, bagamat nagkaroon ng selebrasyon sa aparisyon ng Birhen ng Portabaga, lumalabas na walang opisyal na investigasyon na nangyari tungkol sa bagay na ito. Ikalawa, ang mga pangyayari o yung mga tradisyong oral o mga kwentong bayan ng Cavite sa Cavite Puerto ay katulad din ng mga mito o kwentong bayan na makikita sa ibang parte ng Latin America at saka ng Pilipinas. So there's a certain pattern here. Hindi natin sinasabi na dahil mito siya at hindi tayo sigurado kung alamat lang to, hindi ito mahalaga. Dahil isa sa pinakamahalagang elemento ng debosyon ay ang pagkakaroon ng alamat. Noong panahong yun, hindi pa tayo pumapasok sa punto na ang kada aparisyon o di kaya kwento ng pagpapakita ng Birhen ay kailangang isa lang sa isang matinding scientificong pagsasaliksik. Noong araw, sa pagkakaalam ko, isa o dalawa lamang na gantong pangyayari ang talagang sinaliksik. Ang pagkakaalam ko, ang unang sinaliksik ay ang Birhen ng Kaysasay. Meron ding pagsasaliksik sa Birhen ng Lanabal na hindi aparisyon kundi labanan. Okay, so ang dalawang ito ang alam ko na merong opisyal sa panahon ng colonial period, no, sila yung may official na. Pero itong sa Portabaga, inamin naman nila na wala naman talagang klarong dokumento na mayroong investigasyon. Bagamat yung kwentong bayan ay masasabi nating essential part ng kanilang tradition. And remember, even that tradition is now considered as a national cultural treasure. Because what is rare about umuupo ka dyan, Manny, sa mga body na nagde-declare ng national treasures, di ba? Sa National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Isa sa mga bagay na unique dito, di ba? May tangible and intangible. Sa kaso ng Portabaga, gustong ideklara yung simbahan. Kaya di ba nasira? Wala yung simbahan. Ang dineklara ay yung mas mismong painting. So, movable, tangible heritage yun. At lahat ng mga intangible heritage, alamat, mga ritual, mga sayaw, mga kanta, tula na may kinalaman sa Portabaga is considered as national cultural treasure. See, it's one of the rare cases na meron tayong movable heritage na painting kasama plus intangible. So the task really for the Caviteños to really preserve this is high because they are not just tasked by the state to preserve the painting, they are actually tasked to preserve all the other traditions that revolve around the painting, and it's very, very rare.
Wow, no? So kasi ako nababasa ko rin yung mga write-ups ni Father Vier Mendoza. No? At yun nga paulit-ulit yung yung alamat, no, ng so siguro in light of yung historical documentation, sabi nga hindi mo siya pwedeng tingnan sa ganung bagay, no? Kasi,
yeah, definitely.
Pero because it already permeated for so long, no? Naging tradisyon na siya. Yung tradisyon na yun ang ngayon ang iniingatan. Coming from
Yes.
So, pwede ba natin sabihin na yung isang programa na chismis doon, kasaysayan ngayon?
Well, andyan ba si Lord? Okay. Well, I wouldn't say it's chismis.
Okay.
Bakit nagkakaroon ng alamat? Hindi mo maipapaliwanag yan dahil meron nung nagchichismisan. Ang alamat ay bumubukal. Naku, papasok na tayo sa psikolohiya ngayon, sa archetypal na, we could call archetypal collective memory, no? Kaya rin ang rason, kung mapapansin mo, no, ang mga mitolohiya ng mga mahalaga o sagradong bagay, lagi silang umaangat mula sa tubig. At mapapansin mo to lalo na sa mga deity na babae, Birheng Maria o anuman. Mapapansin nyo, ilang bang santo sa Pilipinas ang nakitang lumulutang sa tubig? Halos lahat yata ng bayan may ganong storya. So, I don't think that it is chismisan lang, nakikibagay lang, and then nagchichismisan silang lahat. There is something in the collective memory of mankind which seems to suggest that the divine or the feminine side of the divine is always associated with water. So, I think papasok na tayo kay Carl Jung at kay Sigmund Freud, pero wala na tayong oras. Okay.
Well, siguro nga ang borderline dyan yung faith, no?
Yes, definitely.
It's the faith, no? Kung naniniwala ka, then that will be part of the yun nga, yung religious orientation.
Yes.
Pass through generation, yun yung tradition, no?
Yes.
Kaya nag-survive siya. Sir, wala pa kasing isang tanong, siguro mamaya pa. Pero isa pang tanong, kasi nga kilala siya, di ba, sa widow of the galleon, no? So, talagang can we truly say na galleon, parang, kasi merong mga reyna ng galleon, yun ang sabi ng iba, di ba? May mga write-up sila sabi, yan ang reyna ng galleon. At actually nga sa Cavite City, yan lang yata ang piyesta na dalawang linggo na magkasunod.
2 linggo.
2 linggo, no? Ganun katindi, no? So yung yung relasyon niya sa galleon, talaga ba natin pwede sabihin na siya ang reyna ng galleon?
Well, we have to be very, very clear with this, no? Maraming magdi-dispute kasi, there are still people na pinaglalaban-laban ng Virgin Mary as if she is several persons. There's no doubt na, remember, there is also the Virgin of Peace and Good Voyage in Antipolo. Okay, that's also associated with the galleons.
Yes, also.
Okay, and you must also take note that the Virgin of Antipolo was in Cavite for almost a decade. Before the Portabaga entered the picture. So there was a time during the Dutch Wars from 1647 onwards or even earlier than that, yung Birhen sa Antipolo binabayan sa Cavite. So tumigil yan sa Cavite. So everybody knows it as the Virgin of Peace and Good Voyage, the protectors of the galleons. So at that particular moment in time when that statue of the Virgin was in Cavite, she was the patroness, she was the Virgin of predilection because at that time wala pang Portabagang umi-enter sa picture. And so when we analyze the story of the Portabaga, it appears to appear into the picture after the Virgin of Antipolo went back to Antipolo proper. Meaning, after the Dutch Wars, tapos na yung threat, wala nang mga posibilidad na magkaroon pa ng mga giyera sa Olandes at pagdaong sa Cavite at sa Maynila. Inaakyat uli yon at muli siyang sumasakay sa mga galleons. So, I mean, the reason here is that hindi rin magandang tingnan kung pinaglalaban-laban mo ang icon. Sino ba talaga yung Birhen ng Antipolo is associated with the galleon. Our Lady of Portabaga is associated with the galleon. I think reality is that they always invoke the image or the name of the Virgin Mary every time they would follow. Now, the Virgin of Antipolo would eventually stay permanently there, high up there in the shrines, no? So bihira siyang lalabas. Lalabas lang to pag sasakay ng vapor. Pagkailangan talaga sa mga, I think that she had around, kinipilang ko nga sa, mabibilang mo sa kamay ang kanyang voyages. Hindi naman siya sumasama lagi lahat papuntang Mexico pabalik, papuntang Mexico pabalik. So in the interregnum na papuntang Mexico pabalik, no, there is proof apparently that when it comes to the blessing, kasi possible na nakasakay na yung Birhen ng Portabaga doon at wala namang competition sa mga Birhen, isang tao lang naman yan, they would use the smaller Portabaga. This is probably by the 1700s na. By that time, the Portabaga cult has already strengthened in Cavite. Siya yung ginagamit pang bless ng galleon. So may sariling image doon sa mga galleons. Siya yung ginagamit pang bless as long as the galleons. And you know, there are other images which are associated with the galleons. The Virgen de Guia was associated with the galleons before Portabaga and before the Antipolo. Kailangan lahat ng dumadaang galleon sa Maynila, dadaan at magsasalbo din ng salute. So, it is something that is fluid. Nagkataon lamang that probably when the Portabaga entered the picture, there is no dominant image of the Virgin because the Virgin of Antipolo is no longer there. So it eventually developed into a highly popular thing to the point that ang popularity niya is interesting. Palaos na ang galleons nang naging very, very popular siya. So by the time ang popularity niya is talagang nag-shoot noong 19th century, noong wala ng galleons, yung galleon nandun pa rin. Kasi it has no longer become a symbol of just the galleons, but it's a symbol of trade. And there are rumors, ito yung chismis lang, but hindi ko confirm. But kaya sinasabi ko yung chismis lang, that the procession in Nolimi Tangere is actually based on the procession of the Soledad. And apparently, as being described by Jose Rizal.
Yeah. Oh, grabe, no? Talagang nakikita natin mga kababayan, no? Meron talagang, sabi nga, maganda yun. Maraming, Virgin Marys of the Galleon. So, once naging, naging chair ng Philippine Academic Consortium for Latin American Studies, yung PACLAS, no? At karaniwan namin hinahanapan ng parallelism sa point of point of comparison, yung Latin American research, no, saka yung Philippine research, no. Ngayon, karaniwan naghuhook doon sa galleon, kasi ito yung kumukonekta sa Latin America, Mexico, saka sa Pilipinas. So, can we consider na itong pag-aaral sa Nuestra Soledad de Portabaga ay isang sabi nating legacy or contribution of this Pacific exchange between the two seaboards?
I think that future researchers, I'm encouraging the members of the Cofradia de Soledad, no, to really continue their research, and they have a very, very good material dossier on the Virgin. You know why I'm saying so? Because there are other popular shrines to Our Lady of Solitude, but we can pinpoint 3. Sa mundo ngayon, meron talagang tatlo. Kasi nawala na yung original, yung kay Becerra, yung pinakita ko na original na statue. That original statue, which is basihan ng lahat ng Soledad, sinira yun ng Spanish Civil War ng mga communist forces. So because of the anti-clerical sentiment at that time, so tatlo yung natirang very popular. One is the Virgen de la Soledad in Calle La Paloma in Madrid, and this occurred only much after, mas bata pa to sa Soledad de Portabaga. Pero ang and you will notice there, patrona siya ng mga bumbero of all trades, no? Firemen. Pero ang interesting sa akin is there is a one place in Mexico, ikaw nakarating ka na sa Mexico, alam mo yan, yung sa Oaxaca, yung meron silang doong Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Oaxaca na patrona rin ng mga sailors. Pero ang Oaxaca, wala siya sa tabing dagat. Okay, and what's interesting about the Oaxaca case is that yung piyesta sa Oaxaca, yung mga terminologies na ginagamit sa piyesta, palma, crucidad, etc., are actually to be seen in the fiesta in Cavite. And nobody has yet done a research on that because when you look at the fiestas in Oaxaca, Mexico, ang piyesta doon, katulad ng piyesta sa Cavite with at least Cavite Puerto. Kasi it's understandable that there will be a Mexican connection because the Mexican crews would stay in Cavite Puerto. They would bring the tamales, they would bring practically all the fiesta associated stuff. So I think this is an important link and that's why I'm highlighting kasi maraming ko may question. Paano naging national, 'di ba? National cultural treasure. Tapos ang image ng Portabaga is always associated with Cavite. How can be a Caviteño thing be national? Now I have to clarify that. Number one, ang unang basihan daw pinakalumang dated painting. Yes, so far it's the oldest dated Marian painting. What if makadiscover tayo in the near future na mayroon pa palang mas luma, di tanggal na yung honor? Hindi naman ganun Because the idea of having a national cultural treasure, hindi ito labanan ng patandaan. But rather, ganong kahalaga ang isang bagay sa national narrative. If you will notice, the devotion to the Portabaga extended beyond Cavite. And you're going to notice most of the samples that you would see, the beautiful samples of the Philippine school are not to be found in Cavite. They are to be found from as far away as Pampanga to as south as Zamboanga. So this is national. Ikatlo, may connection siya sa Pacific trade. So para isa lang siyang painting na malinggit. Pero yung relevance niya, sabi nga nila, huwag niyong ismulin ang maliliit na painting because the Portabaga, beyond its religious function, is actually our connection with the global trade.
Yeah.
Every time you look at it, you will realize that there was one person who painted something which was traded from Madrid to Guadalquivir, to Seville, then to Mexico, etc., balik, etc. And you will see how much they have. This inter-Pacific trade has become mutual. In fact, ang nakakatuwa lang dito is that because of the centuries, nobody knows each other's existence. I do remember Father Vir Mendoza visiting Calle La Paloma in Madrid. And so he brought with him the image of Our Lady of Portabaga and showed the rector of Calle La Paloma. This is our Virgin of Portabaga. And, the parish priest of the rector of La Paloma Shrine was saying, "Hoy, yan yung sa amin, ba't ganyan?" Okay? I don't know. So they are so excited that there are similarities. And I think the Portabaga is one of the few items of exchange na very consistent ang look at nagpapakita lang siya sa mga bansa na may kinalaman sa Pacific Galleon trade. So it's really, for me, that fact alone, national treasure na siya. May miracle man o hindi.
Actually nga, 'di ba, yung October 8 considered as the parang Galleon Day yun international.
International Galleon Day.
Oo.
At it's interesting, Manny, lahat ng Latin American countries may Virgin of Solitude na version. So from Puerto Rico to Cuba, dire-diretso hanggang Philippines. Pero ano ang connection nila? Sila yung Spanish Empire, yung global connections sa Galleon. So I think widow of the Galleons is really an appropriate term.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that very enlightening moments. Ha?
Walang anuman.
Si Philip Medina from Silang, kasi ito ay taong simbahan to, pero researcher to ng mga religious icons din. No? Ang comment niya, I love this lecture. Congratulations, Sir Alain. Maliban sa tubig, natatagpuan rin ang divine feminine sa kabundukan tulad ng mga mito ng Birhen ng Antipolo at Silang.
Yeah, because ang 'di ba ang mga kuweba associated with the womb. Yung matres ng babae. So if you will notice that either tatlo yan, ma'am, yun na napansin ko, no? Tubig, kuweba o bundok, which is associated with the woman, and laging sa taas ng puno. Ewan ko lang, sa Portabaga walang punong pag-uusapan kasi talagang dagat, no? Pero yung iba, mapapansin mo, bakit ang Virgin Mary laging nakikita sa taas ng puno? You will notice that with Manawag. Manawag kay Sasay, Antipolo, all of them are appearing on top of trees. What is it in a tree? Collectively speaking, na symbolic. Diba? So maraming salamat po sa comment. Napakaganda po nun.
Wala nang ibang comment. No? Siguro mamaya pagpatuloy natin. No? Tuloy muna natin sa second lecturer natin. No? This time naman, no? Kilala din ni Sir Alain to. Siya po ay librarian for undergraduate program ng De La Salle Dasmariñas, no? At very artist din, no? Artist din ang ating tagapagsalita ngayon. Puro artist nga yung ating pagsalita natin, no? Pero si Mamean nasa library library sector at pinopromote niya yung local studies collection. Actually, even itong Cavite Studies Center, ang gulo ng collection ito kung walang guide, no? And the study of Mamean about local collection provide us a direction on how to compile everything in local, no? So with that, no, tawagin na po natin ang ating second speaker, Miss Mary Ann Salvador. Ma'am, magandang morning, magandang umaga.
Good morning, sir.
Good
morning, everyone.
Maliwanag po.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you so much. Napaka-interesting nung topic ni Sir Alain. And we were lucky also that we were able to bring here at DLSU-D the Nuestra Señora de Portabaga. So, yeah. Parang hirap sundan ng kanyang lecture. Okay, sir. To start with, allow me to thank Dr. Calairo for inviting me here. To share once again, no, after so many years, the methods for organization that I was created for Philippine local studies materials, which were applied in classifying and cataloging the Cavite Studies collection. So this classification scheme was actually my graduate paper at the Institute of Library and Information Studies, now School of Library and Information Studies in UP Diliman. And I am fortunate enough that it has been presented in different fora, both here and abroad, and now through a virtual presentation. So allow me to share my screen. Okay, do you see now my screen? Okay, this is a method of organization for Philippine local studies materials. For this presentation, I will be discussing the rationale, why I decided to create a standard local classification scheme since we already have existing systems that we can adopt, such as Library of Congress classification scheme and Dewey Decimal classification system. And why did I choose to create one for the local studies collections of a local study center? And lastly, I will be sharing the framework that I utilized for creating the system and how the system works. Okay, this will be the outline of my presentation. So there will be a very brief introduction, the rationale for creating a local classification system, and the guidelines for Philippine local studies classification scheme. Okay. For the aim of this paper is, one, is to define and identify the functions of a local studies center, identify the rationale for creating a local classification scheme. Bakit ba ako nag-venture dito? And explain the basic features and the guidelines for Philippine Local Studies Classification Scheme. Okay, for the information of everyone, especially those who are not familiar with the Local Studies Center, Local Studies Center is a research center established to preserve the knowledge of a particular place, to fulfill and satisfy the long interest and aspiration of its inhabitants, to be familiar with their environment, their heritage, and the genesis of the community in which they live. Currently, there are several number of existing local study centers, and it's growing. And this is through the effort of the Association of Studies Centers in the Philippines, or Kabansa. And I believe this organization was founded by Dr. Calairo. And according to Marcelino Foronda, these research centers have four main functions. First is local study centers serve as a clearinghouse in charge of collecting, organizing, disseminating, and preserving local studies materials of their particular locality. So this was mentioned already by our welcome remark speaker. Second, these research centers are also responsible for conducting, publishing, and promoting local historical research. For example, at the Cavite Studies Center, they keep on publishing a lot of local materials, and it was also mentioned by Prime Minister that he wants every municipality in this province to have their publications. And third, they are expected to promote historical events and to conduct other historical activities like what we are doing. And fourth, they are encouraged to establish networking with the other centers, historical bodies, government agencies, both here and abroad. And that's why they have this association. And this activity actually is in collaboration with different government agencies like NCCA, NHCP, etc. I have mentioned that one of the major functions of a local study center is to collect every local literature which has potential interest to the community it serves, irrespective of type, form, and subject matter. So these materials should be made available to the community. So dapat hindi lang siya nakatago o nandun sa shelves. It should be easily accessed by the community. And for easy access and retrieval, it should be properly organized. And what is the reason, or what are the reasons for me to create a local classification scheme? Why not a different kind of scheme? So according to Ranganathan, the father of library science in India, local studies collection is considered as a special collection and will be needing a special classification scheme. In the study that I have conducted in terms of organization of local studies collection, I found out that no local studies center understudy uses the same method of library classification system in arranging its collections. Even those that are using standardized classification scheme like LC and TDC, they have to choose between the two. And those that are using in-house classification systems have utilized the different techniques and methods of library classification. The problem of classifying or grouping books for a local collection is also true with the other country, as noted by John L. Hobbs. One of the reasons for this is the lack of suitable schemes for classifying local studies materials. The Dewey Decimal classifications or Library of Congress classifications or any other standard schemes may serve well enough for general use, but they are not as detailed as the one for local collections. The problem also arises when these standard classification schemes undergo revisions. Local study center librarians have to decide whether to revise the current system or to leave it as it is. This problem, however, can be avoided if the local collection has its own specially designed classification, independent of that of the rest of the library. And another author or researcher stressed the necessity for a specialized classification scheme for local studies collection. Howard Phillips said that the need for special arrangement for local studies materials, one that is tailored to local conditions, is also given emphasis in the standard set by the Australian government for local studies collection. So hindi lang sa atin yung problema, no? Even in other countries, they also saw the need for making a local classification scheme. So another advocate for the creation of standards for the organization and retrieval of local studies materials is John Partridge of Australian Library and Information Association, who suggested the development of universal standards for organization of local studies materials, such as classification scheme, indexing, thesauri or software, etc. And inspired by these passionate individuals, and since we do not have yet the systems in the Philippines, I decided to create one based on place subject principle of arranging the local studies materials. And this is similar to the one developed by Hobbs and based on Ranganathan law of local variations, as stated by Kumar. So the system is called Philippine Local Studies Materials Classification Scheme. So its main purpose is to ease the organizational burden of classifying local studies materials, help save time, and provide uniformity as well as flexibility. So these are the reasons for creating the classification scheme. So this is now the feature or the guidelines that I created for the system. So I called it Philippine Local Studies Materials Classification Scheme, or PLS-MC. Is created to provide access to local studies materials at the local study center. So as I have said, it uses place subject principles because in the current or the standard system that we use, it always subject first. So this time, since we are dealing with geography, so we started first with the place. A structure similar to Hobbes and based on, as I've said, Ranganathan law on local variations in India. This is alphanumeric. It identifies as many as 3 levels of organization. So ipapakita ko sa inyo kung paano ito ginagamit. So the first level is Geographic Division. So the PLS-MC is a geography-based. So uppercase letters and numbers are used as geographic codes for the initial component, which provides a basic level of organization of the classification system. So ginawa ko, una is per major island, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Yan. And then region. And then town and barangay. So yan yung system. So I will show you how to use this one. So ito yung unang level. So by geography. Next is, second is the subject division. The second level of organization is the subject division, which divided the subjects into 10 main categories. represented by 2-digit 00 to 99. Some class numbers for subclasses are intentionally left unassigned to accommodate new concepts or local topics in a given major subject area. Materials may also be subdivided by forms or type of materials. The order of the main classes for subject division was based on the principle of logical and orderly progression observed in the development of a community. So this is the outline for subject division. So 00 to 09, general works, 10 to 19, geography, 20 to 29, economics, and so on and so forth. And next, for the level 3, which is the main access point designator. So the last component in the system is author title designator, which is represented by a cutter number. So cutter number used for this is alphanumeric method of alphabetizing, and it was taken from the classification scheme for Philippine government publications. Yes, there is also another system which was created specifically for Philippine government publications. And for the proposed classification scheme, I used the cutter author title numbers by the Library of Congress. Ito yun. Medyo technical yung. For the citation order, in classifying local studies materials, the classifier must observe the following citation order. So ganito na siya dapat gamitin. First is a geographic location. Yun yung first level natin. Major group of island, region, province, and city or municipality. Then pangalawa, second level is major subject heading, secondary subject heading, and specific name or proper name, and form or type of materials. Yan. Kung may belong siya sa ethnolinguistic group, then dapat may sub-subject pa siya doon. And then main access point designator. Ito yung author. Kung walang author, yung title. And year of publication. So, for example, if you want to catalog the book, Sulyap sa Lumipas, Mga Tahanang Ancestral sa Cavite, by Emmanuel Franco Calairo, as the following call number. So, L4A, this is the notation for Geographic Division ng Luzon, L4A. Then 2 is for the province of Cavite. Then 71.22, this one is for the subject. So this one is about architecture with subdivision domestic architecture. And for the C3, this one, it refers to the author and then the year of publications. So since this one is provincial-wide yung kanyang content ng libro, so kaya nag-stop na siya dito sa point 2. Pero kung halimbawa meron pa siyang specific locality, may additional pa siya na number dito. Next is, there are also auxiliary tables available as reference. This one include the type of publications or division table. Form type of publication division tables is also a floating table, meaning it may be used whenever the direction to subdivide the materials by form type of materials is called for. So this is also in reference to the classification scheme for Philippine government publications. So I use decimal numbers 1 to 9 to indicate the form type of materials of a particular local studies resources. Then there's also table 3, which refers to the major ethnolinguistic groups. And I adopted, this list was adopted from the list made by Dr. Jesus Peralta. And there's also a period subdivision table, which I adopted from the TNL. This one is for the specific period in events in history. Since most of the publications published by the local study centers are historical in nature. And there's also, this one is cross-reference or notes that can be used as guide by the user of the system. For example, instead of plant life or flora, I use the word botany. And if you want to catalog the book under community development, use the word geography or etc. And notes referring the classifiers to a table with subdivision instruction is used to so that the same instruction is not repeated on the same page or several times over a couple of pages. Example, class 47, municipal town history by event or period. So this one is really a guide to those who are handling the local studies resources, which is one of the major tasks of local study center. So there's also index available at the end of the paper, and these index entries refer to the user to specific LSMC number in the schedule. So para mas madali, may guide na sila rito kung ano yung gagamitin nilang mga notations. And another feature of this one is this is flexible. Flexibility is an important component of this system. The study center may add additional secondary and specific subject headings that are necessary and useful in researching its own local service area. However, in adding or modifying new subject, the classifier must observe consistency in the use of subject heading. As much as possible, a subject authority file must be created for this purpose. So dapat consistent lang sa paggamit ng mga words na pinapasok natin dito sa ating classification scheme. Pwede rin ito magbago, depende rin sa ating Congress kung may mga changes sa halimbawa from municipality to the city. So nagkakaroon yan ng pagbabago. So from time to time, we have to revise the system. And I have here an example on how the materials would appear on the shelves. So for general works, arrange books chronologically under each subject class number. And for local studies materials, so this one you can also use for other resources other than the local studies materials. And I highly recommend that this system be applied to local study centers. The CSE has been adopted this one. And I believe that Tarlac also requested a copy of this system for their local study center. And constant and continuous improvement on the scheme can be done through a thorough inventory of the existing local studies materials. On the basis of this inventory, editing and upgrading of the scheme proposed here can be done regularly to accommodate new topics in local studies. A committee composed of local study centers librarians may be established for this purpose. And lastly, I would like to leave this to you. A properly classified library collections helps in improving retrieval of information. It reduces time of library users in locating information, and also the librarians in organizing the collection. And it helps achieve optimum level of utilizations of available library resources. So yun lang po. Thank you.
Maraming pong salamat, Ma'am Mayan, no? With your developed guideline, no, about developing collections, no, library collection, talagang masystematize na yung inyong yung ating pagkakaroon ng mga local collections. Ang tanong ko lang, no, kasi you're a librarian, definitely, no? So, kaya nga nagawa niyo yung thesis, no? Yung bang inyong collection development program na yan, in the local level, kaya ba siyang ipatupad ng isang hindi librarian?
Sa ngayon po, opo, kasi 'di ba since yung mga tao naman sa Cavite Study Centers are not librarians. So very user-friendly siya kasi I just trained them. Then ngayon sila na on their own, sila na yung nagkakatalog, nagka-classify because they can easily use the system.
Kasi alam natin sa buong Pilipinas, ang daming mga, I may say, struggling local study center, no? Kasi nagbubuo pa lang sila. No? At ang nangyayari dyan, nagbubuo sila ng mga donations, ng mga collection, kung saan nila nakukuha. Ang hirap yung organize, pero hindi sila yung librarian. So, meron ba kayong plan na gawin yung handbook in a popular level para mas madaling mabasa at maintindihan ng halimbawa staff lang ng, kasi katulad na banggit niyo, you train the Cavite Study Center people. Paano kaya kung halimbawa sa Cebu o kaya sa Mindanao, merong mag-adapt niyan? Is it possible ba? O kung wala tayong ganung kakayahan, ay willing ba kayo na mag-host ng isang parang orientation about that? Yes.
Pwede naman, sir. Pero maganda rin yung sinabi mo, sir, na it can be translated into a handbook. Pwede siyang, or for publications. Kasi mas maganda yun kasi mas marami yung mararating niya.
Yan, no?
Mas marami yung makikinabang. Actually, yung ginawa ko, sir, I can put it sa siguro Google Drive and share the link to them. Pwede rin.
Yeah, pero kasi itong LHC and Local History Communities Network under ng NHCP, isa yan sa mga thrust nito, yung local collection, building. At I will, with your permission, I will propose sa NHCP na to have it published, no? Para maikalat natin sa buong Pilipinas kasi parang unique siya, no? Sa inyo pa lang, wala bang katulad niyan sa ibang lugar?
Meron din po sa ibang bansa, pero kasi iba-iba yung nature ng ating geography. So, kumbaga, yung sa atin, unique pa din siya based on our topography, geography. So, wala siyang katulad.
Opo. Ngayon, siyempre familiar kayo sa Cavite Study Center. No? At medyo matagal na rin ako sa Cavite Study Center. Minsan, hindi siya napaprioritize. Halimbawa, na magkaroon ng building. No? Shout out tayo sa studies, no? JDN, Director Rabi Tantingco, no? Meron siyang sariling building, no? Ng mga collection. Well, that's the ideal local study center na naka-house yung collection. Doon sa mga study center na sabi ko nga nagsisimula o minsan nagkulang talaga yung backup nila, no? Merong mga proposal na i-absorb sila sa library. No? At parang resource center sila within a library. Ano ang recommendation diyan? Okay lang ba na ang isang local study center ay pasok sa isang library setup? Or talagang dapat ay ihiwalay siya bilang isang separate unit ng isang institution?
Depende sa kakayanan ng institution yun eh. Kung may pondo siya, edi separate. But kung wala siyang pondo, pwede siyang integrate din sa collection. Pero hindi siya, may special section siya na local studies collection. Parang sa rin po yata yan sa Baguio. Ang nag-handle doon din ay mga librarian. So kasi minsan, kukunti nga rin din po ang librarian sa Pilipinas. At para rin kumbaga, yung kakulangan. So pwede nating kunin yung assistance ng mga librarian or licensed librarian within the institution. Pwede rin namang parang naka-loan siya sa inyo or meron siyang time to organize the collections as part of her job siguro.
So, meaning to say, pag yung inyong ginawang mechanism tungkol diyan sa local collection, no? Pag nakita yan ng isang librarian, automatic maiintindihan yan. Kaya dapat ay Ayun, no? So, ang challenge pala talaga sa atin, kung hindi librarian, no? Yun ang challenge, no?
Madali
Kasi
pa
hindi
din, sir.
madali naman.
Apo. Kasi
Ayun,
step by step na yung ano dun eh, ginawa ko. May guide siya.
may guide siya, no? Pero hindi pa siya published, no? Siya
Hindi
ay,
pa po.
ayun. So, pagtulungan po natin yan, no? Maraming nanonood ngayon, no?
Wow.
Historical Commission, no? Malaki po ang maitutulong sa development ng systematizing the collection of local materials. Kaya sana ay suportahan natin ang programang ito, no? Hindi lamang sa NHCP kundi sa iba't ibang mga mga um, libraries na merong local collection. Meron dito isang comment si Ma'am si Doc Arlene, no? Saan pong kategorya mapapailalim ang oral history?
Teka, hindi ko kabisado yung...
Meron kasi mga
meron sa literature, sir. Meron naman siyang... doon sa classification scheme, meron siyang literature na kasama. So itong pinakita ko, example lang to, pero makapal yan yung ano yan, yung appendices to sa ano ko, sa study ko. This is just an example. Pero kung titingnan mo yung buo na system, nandun na siya. So,
Ma'am, tanong ko lang, no? So yung yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, ito yung mga koleksyong papel, no? Print matter, no to, no? Hindi kasama dito yung mga artifacts. No? Hindi ito parang museum, hindi ito museum collection.
Ay, iba kasi rin po sir yung system na ginagamit sa mga artifacts and mga archiving materials.
So itong sa atin ay more on the
printed collections.
Okay po, Ma'am Yan, maraming salamat po. At baka maubusan tayo ng time para sa ating next speaker.
Exciting. No? Exciting yung susunod.
So, exciting daw po. No? Bakit exciting? Kasi ito talagang acknowledge artist. No? Kung yung mga naunang speakers ay artist din sila pero hindi nila professional artist. Isa librarian, isa teacher. No? Pero itong susunod, talagang artist po ito. No? Well, nakilala ko na siya, na-meet ko na siya before, matagal na, no? Nung magkaroon ng exhibit sa Museo de la Salle. At ngayon ay very active siya dito sa sa mga organize yung mga artists dito sa Cavite, no? As of the moment, siya po ang chairman ng ARTLETICS. At he'll discuss about contemporary arts in Cavite. Ang tinutukoy ko po ay walang iba kundi si Mr. Emmanuel Garibay or Manny Garibay. Ito kayo. Magandang umaga po, sir. Audio po. Ayan.
Yan. Narinig na po ba ako?
Opo, maliwanag po.
Okay. Salamat po. Thank you for having me. Actually, last time we met, I think I told you that your mom was one of my professors.
Oh.
That was a long time ago. Ang tagal-tagal na. This was way back in, I think, early 80s.
Babanggitin ko po yan. You have the floor, sir.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm sorry?
You have the floor if you want to share something about PowerPoint or...
I have to recall what I'm here to talk about. Actually, sige. But I wouldn't mind if some questions are thrown my way in the course of the presentation. No? Because minsan I find it a little awkward talking to myself in front of the screen. No? So it would be helpful, like it kind of brings me to focus. At any rate, I'm presenting right now what we call the Cavite Arts Network. It's not in existence yet, no? Pero it is something that we envision as the result of the many projects that we've been holding here in Cavite. So to begin with, the arts project that started here started way back in 2015 or 2016, no? After we did the Project Bakawan in UP Diliman. But ARTLETICS itself started in 2009. So it just started as an event for for artists to have a good time together, play games, and share some thoughts, stories, ideas. And then eventually it became a bigger entity organizing large-scale arts festivals. So as you can see in the picture, this is one of the athletics events. This one was held in De La Salle, Lipa. So we had a good relationship with De La Salle, Lipa, for more than 4 years. This was during the time of Brother Kenneth. So this is one of the activities, or some of the activities that we hold in athletics. So that includes yoga, athletics, running, basketball, and fun games. No? Basically, just to foster a camaraderie, fellowship, a sense of a community among artists. And then eventually we decided to hold art festivals here in Cavite. So the first one was inside the campus of the Union Theological Seminary, or PCU. It's one campus, no? Philippine Christian University. So the event brought together a lot of artists, both local and international. By local, I mean Cavite-based artists as well as national artists. So like the artwork that you see here on the screen is one of the main or one of the leading candidates for National Artist Award. This is Jun Yi. No? And then apart from the local artists, there was participation also by international artists. Yeah. So this is still part of the first Paghilom Festival. So as you can see, it was not just about the visual arts. So the pictures you see, there is a dance on the left, and then a rock concert on the top right, and then performance art by a performance artist, Medeo Cruz, which is in visual arts. And
sorry,
yeah,
we don't
this
see
one
your,
this should be familiar to this should be familiar to some of you, no? Sorry?
Paki-share po yung screen ninyo. Wala po kaming makita.
Without hindi
Sir
niya
Manny.
nakikita. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Ayun. It's a good thing I have my two daughters with me dahil I don't know how these things go, no? So just to give an idea of what I showed earlier, no? Yon, no? So this was the series of annual events that we held in De La Salle Lipa for 4 years, until eventually we decided that athletics would concentrate on organizing the Paghilom Arts Festival. So here you see the first one in 2017. So like I said, it's not just visual arts, it has several components. So this is dance, and then there's a rock concert, and then there's performance art by a famous performance artist, Medeo Cruz. And then balik mo nin. Yeah. Okay, so this should be very familiar for those who are from De La Salle, Dasmariñas. One of the, De La Salle, Dasmariñas was also involved in the first Paghilom Arts Festival. Aside from the murals, there were also installations and exhibitions held inside the campus. And yeah, and it came with a series of art talks as well, no? And then finally, it was culminated by a traveling exhibition to all the 5 SM branches in Cavite. So we did a traveling art show, no? So this is one you can see on the picture. It's one of the venues. I think this is one. This one is in Dasmariñas. Yeah. So these are some of the artworks exhibited during the traveling show. And you can see on the left, that's a famous lady, no? Lady artist, Mayan Salvador. And the one on the right is also a well-known artist, especially for those who are based in De La Salle, Dasmariñas. He's the main artist responsible for many of the animal sculpture that you see along the road. His name, by the way, is Matthews Garcia. And then from the PCU campus, we moved the Paghilom to Amadeo. So Amadeo in Barangay Halang was the host of the next two Paghilom Arts Festivals that followed. And eventually it gave birth to the establishment of the Alitap-Tap Artist Village. No? So you can see here one of the installation artists and performance artists from Colombia. No? What's her name? Maria Munoz. Yeah, sorry, I forget names easily. So the event was participated oftentimes by a lot of young people. So these are school children who participated in the on-the-spot painting competition, which was preceded by an arts workshop. No? And you see some of the, in the pictures here are some of the installation works all over the grounds of the artist village. And in one of the structures or one of the houses, there were painting exhibits as well. No? Yeah. And in Paghilom 3, this was before the lockdown last year, and it rained a lot, but in spite of that, it did not dampen the spirit of the third Paghilom. And there was also an added dimension. No? So the arts festivals are becoming more and more community focused. So a major part of the arts festival was the involvement of medical practitioners and dentists. No? So here you can see mga dental, I think they're kind of practicum students. I don't know. Pero they're parang treating a dental patient. No? So that's one. And then again, there were workshops, painting workshops, and then dance workshop on the right. And then you in the background, you see painting exhibitions. No? And then in the evening, again, we had the usual concert. And there was also, film showing. No? So this is an interesting photograph because like it's showing the viewers, no? Instead of the viewers looking at the film. So it's showing the reaction to the film. So yeah, so you see on the left screen, that's actually Lolita Carbon, one of our rock icons in Philippine folk rock music scene. So there you go. That's the Alitap-Tap artist community, and it's a growing community up to now. When we started, there were just less than 10 individual artists. Right now, I really have no idea how many there are at the moment, but it continues to grow now in numbers. And the interesting part is some people in the community whose property are connected to the Alitap-Tap community are making their properties available for sale for any interested artist. So yeah, so parang you can still go there and ask if there are still available spots. It's a very secure community, and yeah, parang it's a farm and art community. And inside the Alitap-Tap Artist Village, ARTLETICS has an art residency program that houses both studios and an art gallery. So you see on the picture is the exhibition, a most recent exhibition. I think it's still currently on show right now. So we call it the Punlaan Art Space. And this is one of the outdoor murals. This is actually an outdoor restroom, no? And it's oftentimes the site of a changing mural exhibit. And then one of our sites as well is the Tagaytay Contemporary Gallery. So this is in inside the Las Brisas subdivision. So it's also one of the sites for our exhibitions and art events. And one of the events you see on the left is a painting exhibition by artist Winston Hernandez. And you see him here, he's doing a performance. And then art workshops are also held there. And then occasionally there are impromptu or kind of spontaneous concerts performed by musicians who are also friends of our of the network. So we go now to Alfonso. So as you can see, that's why we call it the Cavite Arts Network. We have multiple sites inside Cavite, and Alfonso inside Taiwanak Ilaya, Barangay Taiwanak Ilaya, is host to the Linangan Arts Residency Program of ARTLETICS. So we provide art residency, usually running for 7 weeks, for young artists. It's an extensive course providing not just a studio for them, but an extensive mentorship program as well. So it's designed to enable artists to become not just established as artists, but also to be holistically developed. So one of the features of the program is organic gardening. So we are also able to produce enough for the food we eat. And eventually we plan to be entirely self-sustaining as far as food is concerned. And then we also hold workshops. And then on the lower right of the image, you see the residents picking up garbage in the river. So the residency site has a series of stairs leading down to the river, and the artists go down at least once a week to clean up. And the idea is for them to be able to have a consciousness of ecological balance as part of their growth. So at the moment, we have 5 visual artists in our mentorship program. So these are sample of the works that they have, and it's quite diverse. No? So at least 3 of them are pretty much into painting, and then 2 are more into non-traditional format. I think they're more into installations. No? So this is also part of the program. We emphasize on fitness, health and fitness. So every morning, the residents are required to get up early, do exercises, play games. So the whole idea is to emphasize on fitness among the artists. It is also meant to break the stereotype that the artist is an irresponsible bohemian. No? So in the program, we don't allow any form of vices like alcohol and cigarettes. So, and of course, because of that, we emphasize on healthy living and healthy eating. Now, early last year, the artists were also involved in assisting for the victims of the Taal volcano eruption. So those who were displaced by the eruption, we prepared hot food for them, and it was a good experience for many of the artists. And then on top of that, we also decided to raise funds in order to continue with that support. So from the money that was raised, the artists, we prepared relief goods, and we just didn't give them relief goods in plastic bags. No? As you can see, we sort of repurposed flour sacks to become bags, and then printed with a design, no? And then handed down to the displaced victims of the Taal eruption. So this is some of the exhibits that are held inside the residency venue. So at the end of the 7-week residency period, the artists are presented to the public and are asked to talk about their show. So this enables the artists to also be able to articulate their process. So it's not enough that their crafts are honed, no? And they have a mastery of their craft. It's also necessary that they exercise their ability to discuss their works, no? Because many of the works do need a lot of explanation. So the ability to articulate their works is very helpful for these upcoming artists. So these are sample of the works by our previous art residents. So yeah, no. So you will notice the diversity of works. So parang it's a wide range of work, from the more realistic to something more pop in format. So there are actually a lot of works, but we are only showing you a token of the body of works that have been produced by the artist here. And it actually just formally started early last year. No? So we're looking up in terms of the prospects of the Cavite Arts Network growing. The thing is, siguro, in connection to the Cavite Historical Society, in a way you can say that we are also participating in history making here now. And I think the important thing is to see how important art is in terms of defining a collective consciousness, no? Collective cultural consciousness. So yeah, yan lang po.
So, marami pong salamat Sir Manny Garibay. No? At Well, narinig po natin yung initiative, no, para mabuo, no, network, no, Cavite Arts Network, at you presented several group of artworks, no, at this is more the contemporary arts in Cavite, no. Sabi nga niya kanina, history in the making, no. Um, real art. Actually, bagit niya kanina po yung paghilom. Sir, naging bahagi po ako ng paghilom. I was invited.
Sorry.
Pero I'm not as a painter, pero is a singer. Isa ako sa mga kumantaro na. Ang grupo namin yung campus medley.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sa PTA.
We get too many projects na parang, and then siguro as you get older you forget a lot of things na rin. But we're really happy that with these initiatives we're able to connect with a lot of people na, and then realize that there are a lot of possibilities that can be explored through collaborative ventures.
Yeah. Actually po, nung ako'y nasa, although nasa NCCA pa rin naman tayo, no, National Commission for Culture and the Arts, nung nagsagawa po ng pagbaba ng bayanihan, yung To Heal as One project para tumulong sa mga tao na mabigay ng ayuda, isa po sa mga parang hindi masyadong represented ang artist, no? Marami, affected ang mga artist. Kaya pinag-draft ang mga commissions, ang mga national committees ng mga guidelines na paano ba makakababa ang mga ayuda. Alam ko 5,000 bawat artist, no? Para maibigay kasi talagang apektado rin ng mga artist. At siguro yung ginagawa ninyo isang paraan, no, para magkaroon ng alam naman natin yung tinatawag nating personality, no, yung legal personality. Magaling ka nga sa art, pero you have to conform in a legal way dun sa mga dokumento, yung mga ganyan, no. So I think with your group, no, they will be parang magkakaroon ng legal personality, no, legal representation that could transact sa NCCA.
Yeah, marami na po kaming naging projects that are supported by the NCCA. And I guess one of the things I can say is the major challenge of working with NCCA is we are subject to the same kind of bureaucratic system that all the other people are subjected to. Not that we want to be treated in a special way, except that parang most artists actually are very much challenged or would have a high level of difficulty in complying with all the requirements. Kasi hindi po namin kasanayan yung being thorough in terms of accounting, being thorough in terms of writing things, mga ganon. And I think the most difficult part is when we got the grant already, the handing over of the funds come after the project is completed. So ibig sabihin, so what do? Mangungutang-ngutang ka. And the money is not even given all at once. No, it comes in tranches. So parang maghihintay ka. At one point, we waited for more than a year for all the money to be paid to us. No, so parang it's really a big challenge. Siguro if there's a way by which a different kind of arrangement can be made to consider the situation of most artists. I mean, we consider ourselves very lucky because we have a team of personnel who work for us, but that is not the case with other artist organizations, and most of them talagang they really encounter a lot of difficulty in just getting getting the funding is an approved grant is a challenge by itself. yung accounting and finally getting the money is the harder part actually.
Totoo po yan, no? Well, kasi ang government nga ay subject to COA rules, no? Subject to so many auditing process. Kaya pagdating sa mga ganyan, talagang napakahirap. But yes, of course, sana nga it could be no, maging compact, was simpler, no? We will do that, no? At kasi meron namang fund talaga ang government for funding projects, no? Sa different committees ng NCCP, no? So I think meron po kaya tayo sa ano natin walang tanong sa Q&A, no? Maraming comments sa FB no. Tingnan nga natin yung ating FB, no.
Doc,
Yes, sir. That's
Mari.
Okay.
Gusto ko lang pong batiin ng grupo ni na Sir Manuel at saka ang Cavite Arts Network kasi napakaganda po ng layunin nila. Sa Imus Historical Society po ay nagsagawa din po kami ng painting contest na ang ginawa pong tema ay tungkol sa kalayaan. So, inihahatid po ito tuwing June, except for last year, na ang theme po ay tungkol sa kalayaan, pero ang naging title po ay Kulayaan. So, bagay na bagay po sa tema ng ating Independence Day. So, yun pong inyong ginagawang collaboration na nakakatulong kayo sa mga nais matuto ng pagpipinta at ang pagtatayo nyo ng mga maraming art exhibit facilities dito po sa ating bayan ay talagang kamangha-mangha. Kasi bagamat nabanggit ninyo na kayo po ay hindi napopondahan ng maayos, ay talagang sinisikap nyo makatulong lalo na sa mga tulad nitong nakaraan na disaster po at kaawang mga kababayan natin ng Taal eruption. So, binabati ko po kayo at sana nga po ay maipatuloy natin to sa pag-aalaga ng ating kalikasan at pag-aaral ng mga murang isip tungkol sa kahalagahan ng sining. Salamat po.
Salamat din po.
Salamat po, Doc Arlene. Sir Alain, meron dito mga comment tungkol sa lecture mo. Sa FB, tinitingnan ko, binabrowse ko yung FB, no? Lahat daw ba ng, galing kay Jess Evangelista, no? Askan daw niya yung mga Virgin Mary, lahat ba ng Virgin Mary or mga painting na sa Pilipinas ay nakabatay sa Mexico? Or yung ba ay, kumbaga, binabatay din sa mga character sa Bible?
What do you mean nakabatay?
Oh, yun kasi yung yun lang yung message niya. So,
siguro anong pagkakaintindi mo, Kuya Man?
Siguro pagkakaintindi ko yung bang maraming mga icons natin ay inspired din ng Mexican culture.
Okay. I think we have to also consider the fact that may influence ang Mexico, no? Particularly two of our greatest icons, Our Lady of Peace and Good Voyage and that of the Black Nazarene of Quiapo are from Mexico. But it does not necessarily mean that all icons in the Philippines are entirely influenced by Mexico. In fact, very early on in the history of Christianity in the Philippines, mabilis agad na tap yung local labor. Local meaning Filipino and Chinese. So that's why you're going to notice as early as the late 16th century, most of our iconographies are actually locally made. Contrary to popular notion, kasi may notion tayo, basta nakakita ng santos, made in Spain, etc. No, but the early examples, kasi masyadong mahal namang I guess you're very much aware, sa galleon noon, kung magdadala ka ng santo na malalaki, masyadong mahal because binabayaran mo ng tax kada space sa galleon, So ang pinaka-practical na dinadala noon is actually mga prints, yung mga pwedeng irolyo, maliliit. And then from there, dito na lang pinalalaki sa Pilipinas. And a good example would be in the case of the Dominicans, the original Our Lady of the Rosary is very, very small. And it's only later that the Lanabal entered the picture. And that is locally made. It's made by a Chinese guy from Ilocos and probably the rest of the frame, etc., made in the Philippines. So may influence ba ang Mexico? I think it would be too simplistic naman to say that all our images are influenced by Mexico. But there are specific places with connection with the galleons. Because hindi naman basta-basta sa lahat ng parte ng Pilipinas pumapasok yung Mexican influence, no? But there are some, Cavite, probably some parts of Pampanga, wherein they have direct contacts. And in that cases, meron tayong makikita ano, but not all images can be traced back to Mexican influence, or I think that's, for me, no, Chinese influence in Philippine sacred art is even more evident. Siguro yun na isang bagay na kailangan. Understated yung influence ng Mexico, na medyo underappreciated, andyan. But compared to Chinese influence in Philippine sacred art, ang lakas ng Chinese influence.
Malakas talaga.
Of course, not to mention the indigenous traditions as well.
Yeah. Sir, last na lang, no? Galing kay Chris Salinas. No? Ang Canonical galleon po ba ay may koneksyon sa naging itsura at disenyo ng mga birhen sa Cavite at ibang lugar sa Pilipinas?
Hindi ko alam sa ibang parte ng Pilipinas, no? But I think the galleons itself, it's not the galleons per se, but rather it's the issue of trade. Okay? If you're familiar with the models, no, yung mga ume-enter sa picture, what do we have? Among the first things na pumasok sa Pilipinas na models, kasi it would influence the way Filipinos and the Chinese would eventually reproduce these things. Kasi sila yung tinatap na labor sa paggawa ng mga santo, paggawa ng mga paintings, etc. And normally, ang dinadala dito, at least as far as I know, will be smaller images, and particularly very, very strong ng panahon ng Kastila, ng early stages from around the late 16th to the early 17th century, Flemish prints, no, yung prints from Belgium. I guess most people are unaware that although Cebuanos are very much, I think, those in the arts history, alam to, no? Yung Santo Niño sa Cebu is actually Flemish. It's not even Spanish. It's supposedly made in Belgium. So you will have the Flemish model. You will have the Spanish model. Now, ang idea dito is that they enter through the galleons. So you have all this small stuff, sometimes large stuff. Ang paniniwala nga sa Nazareno, baka yung ulo lang talaga ang dala. Okay? And then from there, Filipinos and Chinese artisans would have to improvise. Paano nila gagawing ito sa isang kultura na wala namang, at that time, hindi bago to sa atin eh. Meron tayong mga kultura, meron tayong sariling sining, pero kailangan matuto tayo na gumawa ng mga ganito. So, ang isang ordinaryong santero ng, say, late 16th century to early 17th century have to rely on, first you have a visual model, probably from Europe. And then normally there is also the guidance of probably a Spanish friar who would tell them what to do, because in some cases the carver or the artist is not even is not even Catholic, like in the case of what happened in Lanabal. Hindi naman Katoliko yung gumawa noon. I mean, probably Buddhist. So they have instructions. So dito napapasok yung mga individual circumstances. Now, we cannot really make specific decisions, but definitely yung modeling would come from the galleon trade. Because at the time, it's the galleons that connects us with the outer world. Without the galleons, how much do we owe from the galleons? Pati yung humble nga na kamote, di ba? You got my point? Simpleng kamote will not enter the picture in the Philippines without the galleons. You got my point? Kung kamote lang yun. Okay. What more yung mga gantong mga bagay? So I think not just in terms of iconography, I feel that Mexican influence or Mexican how do you call this, connections in Philippine history is so underrated. That's why we really encourage other researchers to reconsider studying this aspect of our culture, because Mexico has influence is not probably in the direct way, but it's there. Na andyan yan. Na hindi lang natin napapansin pero understated. Okay?
Actually, ang tanong ko nga dyan ba't kaya hindi dumating dito yung pyramid ng Mexico? Biro lang.
Hindi na umabot. Hindi na umabot. Tapos na yun. Okay.
Ano po yan, no? Totoo po yan na underrated. Kaya nga ang Philippine Academic Consortium for Latin American Studies, we're looking ways to bridge the gap in terms of
research about parallelism. Dati nakaka-attend ako ng mga national days ng mga embassies, it so happen naman ang mga embassy pala, they cannot parang forge collaboration with universities. Pwede sila mag-identify ng universities sa mga countries nila sa Latin America, pero sila mismo ay wala silang parang personality to transact. Liban lang kung sila ay papayagan ng Ministry of Foreign Affairs nila, Kaya yung ating Mexican relation, especially sa academy, nabubuo siya through mga NGOs, or through university linkage, hindi yung government to university.
In fact, Manny, isa sa mga kasamahan ko sa Archaeological Studies program, yung isa sa mga bossing namin doon, si Ginoong Juan Rofes, isa siyang arkeologo mula sa Peru. Siya mismo nagsabi sa akin dahil bago siya pumunta dito, syempre, exchange teacher, iniisip niya, Philippines, Spanish influence. Kasi yun ang nakalagay sa mga tourist brochures. Pagpasok niya, sabi niya, hindi naman Spanish to. This is Mexican, not even Peruvian. It's really Mexican. Tumigil din siya ng ilang taon sa Peru. Sabi niya, napakalaki, hindi lang na-appreciate. So we really have to look into it. Kayo na mag-spearhead niyan sa Galyon.
Well, I think magandang parting words na we have to expand our agenda,
Agenda.
Itong Latin Asia Pacific connections.
Oh yeah, Asia Pacific in particular.
So I think with that we're done, Marami pong salamat sa ating mga speakers, Professor Alain Austria from Benilde, Ma'am Salvador sa ating library, at si Sir Manny Garibay from ARTLETICS. Maraming salamat sa inyong pakikilahok sa webinar na ito. At sana ay, kung sino may mga nanonood sa atin ngayon, at alam ko marami, alam ko marami silang mga natutunan sa inyong mga presentations. So bago tayo matapos, siguro maganda magkaroon ng as usual, photo off, pwede po bang pakibukas ang inyong mga videos. Sila sir, wala na, nag-lunch na. Kaya si Sir Manny, Tokayo. Si Prime Minister ay wala pa, Anyway, so picture tayo. Jerwil. Na lang, picturean yung although ako rin mag-picture. Ay, si Prime Minister narito po. Prime, magkakaroon lang po ng pictorial, sir. Okay po. So, 1, 2, and 3. Isa pa po, isa pa, para, gusto ko yung back up, baka mamaya ay, So, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So, Sir Mams, maraming salamat po sa ating lahat. Ingat po tayo at tumutok lagi sa mga programang may kinalaman sa ating kasaysayan at kultura. Ito po inyong lingkod, nagpapasalamat tayo sa NHCP, sa Chair Dr. Rene Escalante, ng National Historical Commission, sa Cavite Studies Center, to of course sa Salle University, Dasmariñas, kay Dr. Marco Saez, ang vicar namin dito, at kay Brother Gas, ang President, sa Cavite Historical Society, kay Prime Minister Dirata and the rest of the officers of the organization, at sa lahat ng sumusuporta at partner ng project na ito, isa pong maraming salamat. So muli, abangan nyo kami sa susunod na buwan sa isa na namang LHCN seminar. So maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayo lahat. Bye po.